Hey everybody, Jim here from Carolina Outdoor Magazine TV Live, and welcome to our third webinar. Tonight we're going to be talking and discussing deep water tactics and tips. What this program is going to be about this evening, folks, is going to be about targeting fish in 30 to 60 feet of water, plus 60 feet of water. Now, we get a chance to do that a lot up here in some of these lakes, and perhaps some of you have water that deep around where you are fishing for walleyes, smallmouth, perch, anything like that. But you know, a lot of times in midsummer or through the winter months, you're going to find fish that are going to be stacked up in that deeper water, and sometimes without the right presentation, it's hard to get to them. So that's what tonight's show is going to be about. We're going to show you some of the tips and the techniques we've used. We're going to show you some of the rigs we use. We're going to show you some of the video we use where we've caught fish down that deep. Now, to do this, you've got to be able to do two things. You've got to refine a little bit the way you're used to fishing. One thing you have to do is you have to find fish or bait fish, and you need to watch your depth finder consistently, okay? And another thing you need to have is the right kind of equipment. Now, I have a couple of rods here that we're going to be showing you here in just a little bit. And the reason I like these rods is because they function good in deep water. Are these the type of rods I would use if I was fishing in 10 feet of water? No, I don't think so, because they're not practical. They're too heavy duty of a rod for what I want, okay? You got to understand that you're using thin line and you're fishing deep. So in my opinion, you need a little bit stouter rod, okay? And the reason for that is that when you set the hook on that fish and you've got 60 feet of line out with a 3/4 inch weight on there, you've got to be able to keep that rod tip has got to be able to keep the tension on the fish, because if he all of a sudden rockets up to the surface, you get a good chance of him throwing that hook out of his mouth. So them are some of the things we're going to talk about tonight. Let's go ahead and get started. We're going to go to this first clip, and this is where a buddy of mine, myself and John, we're on a lake called Lake James. It's up outside of Nebo, North Carolina, between Nebo and Morganton, North Carolina. Beautiful mountain lake, really good clear water. And we're bringing these fish up, folks, out of 40 to 65 feet of water. You know, 65 feet of water, really, that's a long ways down, you know, to bring fish up. So let's go ahead and watch this first clip. And this is a clip where John hooks onto a really nice smallmouth, about a 4.5 pound smallmouth, brings him up from about 52 feet of water. Let's go ahead and watch that clip now. That's what we're looking for right there.
Yeah. There'll be some big smallmouths in that again.
Sure is.
What we're doing here, folks, is I'm coming out here about 65 feet deep, dropping the lines about 40, 50 feet, and then I circle around towards this island where it comes up about 30 feet. And it seems like them fish are getting right up on that hump. So the time I cross that island, my bait's bobbing off the bottom, and that's normally when I get the strikes.
There he is. Oh yeah. I'll crank this one in here in a minute.
It's not wrapped that bad.
Let me hold your pole for you, John.
It's almost off. Not a bad little first fish.
Not bad at all.
If we got pretty colors in them. We're gonna let this guy go. See if we can get some more of them.
All right, let me talk just a little bit about what we were doing in that particular area. Now, that area right there gets down to about 100 feet deep, all right, somewhere in that area. And it's right in the old river channel. And if you look on the map, I'm going to show you a map here, you'll see a wing dam there. So we're fishing, it's an old dam that was there in the old river before they flooded and turned that into a lake. So where we're fishing, we're showing bait and we're showing fish. Now that's a long ways down. So that's where that fish came out of. It was right around an area where there was an island, and between that island is that old dam, and then it comes back up on the other side into shallower water. So it's very deep there. There's a lot of structure. You know, not far from where we were at on that island, it gets up to about 10 feet of water, and it drops off fast, guys. I mean, I'm talking about we can go 25 to 30 feet from that island right there, and we can be in 85 feet of water in no time. So it's a real fast drop off. The walleyes, the white perch, and the smallmouth use that structure as a staging area to go up and down during the day. As the water warms up, they come up in shallower water and they'll feed up around that island. A lot of rocks down there, they warm up quickly. So, and that's where they'll feed. All right. Let's go ahead. We're going to get into rigs here in just a little bit, and we're going to, get into a few different things. I got a few poles set up here I want to talk to you about to show you the kind of rigs that we use. A lot of things that we do out there fishing is really technical when we're fishing like this in deep water, okay? You know, fishing over the years has got to where, and even hunting, has got to where it's a lot more technical now. It's not like it used to be back in the day where you'd go out in your boat and you'd look for a spot and you'd say, well, that place over there looks pretty good. We caught them over there last week. You fish for an hour or so. If they're not biting, well, I guess they're not biting today. So you head on home. Now, these days you have GPSs, you have autopilots and iPilot trolling motors. You have maps and markers and all kinds of ways where you can find fish on your depth finder and mark them and stay on the fish. You know, if you're out in the middle of a lake on a hump and you don't have a depth finder, you might find that hump one time, but when you go back, you may not find it. So, you know, there's several ways we like to do that. One thing I like to do is when I go over an area with this fish, I'll hit the mark button on my GPS and I'll mark it, okay? That's just one example of what you can do. Another example is that they have these markers, okay? They come apart like that. You can buy these markers. They have a lead weight and about 100 feet of line on them, so you can get down there good and deep. And some other times, if we're fishing just a small area with fish, like a flat area or something where there's a flat and it's very, not much structure, we'll throw out a marker, and that'll give us an idea of the location where we saw the fish, and we can just keep using our autopilot or our iPilot trolling motor and just keep maneuvering around that area and stay on top of the fish. I think it's very important these days to be successful and to catch a lot of fish. I think what you need to do is you need to find the bait first of all, but you need to stay on the bait and stay on the fish when you find them. Because if them fish are feeding, they're going to be with the bait. Let's go ahead and watch another real quick clip here of John catching another fish. And this was a fish that was also brought out of deep water using the same technique. And, we're going to show you another few clips right here, and then we'll come back and we'll talk to you about them. So let's go ahead and we'll show you the clip of that. We're fishing, folks, in about 60, 65 feet of water. It's late December, and there was a cold front. What was it? This is what? This is Sunday. What was the cold front? Yes, Friday. Friday night there was the cold front. John come out here Saturday and did really good. I think he boated 5 or 6 smallmouth, his biggest one probably being 6 pounds. So we're back on this spot. We're about 2 days behind the cold front. Now last night it was down again about 24 degrees, somewhere in there. So these fish are really, you know, held up right now in deep water, and we're hoping what's going to happen is it warms up today. They're going to come up on the shallower water and start feeding better. So what we're doing right now, we're just fishing and targeting pockets of bait fish that John's finding on the bottom, and just slowly trolling over them bait fish is what we're doing. It's a good technique if you have to come out and fish by yourself. You can put a few rods out, sit in the front of the boat, work the trolling motor, and just slowly work over them fish, and just look for them on your depth finder and work that pot of bait. Sooner or later you'll get a bite. You got him?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I see him. Oh yeah.
She tried to jump out, didn't she? That's a good one. On the outside of her lip.
Yep.
She was
Barely. I saw the minnow come off there. He flipped the minnow off, so just barely. We all come pretty close to losing him, didn't we?
She. Take a picture.
Now that fish right there came out of about 40 feet of water. You can see on the depth finder, right, you know, that we were showing, you know, 30, 35 feet, but we were still working the drop-off area. So I think he was down about 40, 45 feet. There again, we found bait, we found fish, and we marked it on our depth finder. We marked it on our GPS. So we stayed, you know, basically we stayed, you know, right where we needed to be, right in the fish. Now, I want to talk a little bit about rigs, okay? And then here in a little bit, I'm going to show you some maps of how we determine different areas on maps on the GPS on where to fish. But I want to show you a few rigs that we got. I showed you the markers, okay, which is a very important thing to use. Now, I want to show you the rods. And I'm going to try to do this without knocking all kinds of studio stuff over, because on the camera it looks like I got all kinds of room. But folks, it's little cramped quarters right here, so we'll see if we can get by without knocking a bunch of stuff over, okay? Now, this is the kind of rod, one of the rods that I like using. Now, basically what you do is you're going to hang that rod in your rod holder like this. We leave our rod straight out and we do what we call tight lining, all right? And that's where you set up your boat to be fishing in 45 feet of water, for example. You're going to open up your bail, and you can do this several ways. You can do it in the rod holder, which is probably a lot closer to get the depth accurate, or you can hold it. But you're going to open up the bail, and you're going to let the line out until it hits the bottom. Now, when it hits the bottom, you need to practice a little bit and find out how many winds your line comes up before it picks the bait off the bottom, okay? And once you find that out, then you just crank your reel up, or you can watch your rod tip. You'll know when your line hits the bottom. It'll just go limp. So pick up your line and pull your bait off the bottom. Now, on a really, really good depth finder, you're going to be able to see that weight, and you're going to be able to see that bait on the depth finder. It will show up as just a straight line. But if you can't, just get used to being a line watcher. Pick the line up and watch your depth, and know that, okay, I'm now at 42 feet. If the bottom comes up, you're going to have to crank up a little bit of line, because if you're not, you're going to be dragging across the bottom and you may get hung up, and then you're going to tie up and everything. So This is a medium action rod. Because of the crystal clear water on Lake James, I'm only using 8-pound test line. I have used 6-pound, but some of these bass and walleye, they can get pretty big there, and you don't know, and we are fishing deep, so the line's going to disappear a little bit as you get down. But 8-pound test line is about maximum. And the one reason being is because I want to be able to allow my bait with a live bait presentation to swim around. All right, let me show you another rod. This is the same type rod, but this has my actual rig tied on to it. Now, I don't know if the camera is going to be able to get up close enough shot. What we have is my 8-pound test line. All right, and it comes down to my weight. Now, there's different kind of weights you can use. I use all the way from a 1/4 ounce egg sinker, sometimes all the way up to an ounce egg sinker. Now, that's going to matter, guys, on a lot. It's going to matter if you're just bumping along with the trolling motor. If you noticed, we don't have much wind blowing in this particular video. So we're having to use our trolling motor to bump along. We'll hit the trolling motor and move about 2 feet. Hit the trolling motor and move about 2 feet. So, you're going to want your line to stay straight as it can be, and you're going to want to stay as close to the bottom as you possibly can without getting hung up. So it just so happened that day, this is the rig I had. I had about a 3/4 ounce sinker on there. Now, when I rigged this up, I have a follower, a Facebook and a YouTube follower. The fellow's name is Max Hill from Max Hill Fishing. I want to give him a shout out here, because I tied this rig up real quick to do the show, and on an example that I had used, and he messaged me, and I like that because it just brings up little things that we forget. And he says, why don't you put a bead in between your swivel and your egg sinker, and that will protect your knot. And he's correct, because we usually do that. If you notice some of the rods John was using, that's how he has it rigged up. And that does two things. It protects that knot from the egg sinker bouncing and hitting it. Does it work? I guess probably it does. It's just a good practice. But what I like about it is that if you're jigging this up and down and this is moving around a little bit down there, it's making a little clicking noise, and that's going to attract the fish. So that's a good thing to remember. Appreciate you, Max, bringing that up to us. And that's what we'd like you folks to do. If you have a thought, please just let us know, and we'll be glad to make sure we post it and give you a shout out. Max has his own YouTube page. He's just starting it up, his YouTube channel. It's Max Hill Max Hill Fishing. And he's starting to do some live streaming. So if you would, go and subscribe to his page and give him a little support. Anyway, we come down off from our swivel, and I have about 2.5 feet of monofilament line right there, which is, there again, 8-pound test. And it comes down to a number 6 circle hook. Now, I love circle hooks because where I'm fishing with live bait for smallmouth and walleyes, the smallmouth, I'm definitely going to return them back anyways. I don't want to get them in a position where I'm going to hurt the fish. So what I like about a circle hook is that they are designed to catch the fish in the lip of the mouth. They're not designed for you to set the hook when you get one. You're just supposed to pick up your rod and start reeling. And this hook, when it comes out, it'll catch very easily, on the lip of their mouth. And it's almost certain that every time when you bring a fish in, if you look, it'll be right in the corner of his mouth. Always try to get a circle hook that has a little curl to it. I've done this in demonstrations before, and I don't know if the camera can get close up enough to see that little curl, but that thing has a little curl, and that just helps that hook get stuck when it comes out. There are circle hooks out there that don't have that, and you can put the hook between your fingers and pull it right out. You can't do that with these circle hooks. It'll grab your skin. Alright guys, I've come out here to my boat and I have turned on my depth finder to bring up the map of the location that I've been talking to you about in the webinar, and this way you can get a better idea of exactly the location we've been fishing in and the type of structure we've been fishing in. So you know, I've got this particular area on my GPS, so I can go back to it and refer to it later. So let's go ahead here and take a close-up shot here, and we'll see what we're talking about, and you can see better the area that we're looking at. Now, if you look right here at this area, I'll zoom in a little bit closer here in a minute. But if you look here at this area, let me get something here I can point with a little bit better. Use the end of my knife, okay? That way it doesn't block the screen. But if you look right here, you can just barely see that island we're talking about. And all around, if you remember, I was discussing with you about the contour lines being further apart and being close together. See these areas right here? These are areas that drop down really quickly, and then they start to level out as you get out toward the bottom, where the bottom levels out to an area right here where it's pretty well just a flat basin. So, you know, the old river channel comes down through here and comes down through here, and I believe this to be an old earthen dam area right in here is what I believe. And as you can see right here on this side, it drops down extremely fast. And these here are some of the areas we were targeting. It drops down really quick and then flattens out before it comes back up again around these areas. And you know, this area, a lot of walleye and white perch and bait will stay in this one flat area right here, and then they'll move up and transition up in the shallower water as the water warms up. And it's the same thing on this side. You can see how it drops off really sharply, really quickly. And you know, we're talking right here of being in, you know, anywhere from 10 feet of water to dropping off to close to 100 feet. Right here, I know you can't see that number. It says 110 feet deep right there on that number. So that's how quickly this drops off. So that's just something for you to remember, okay? When you're going out fishing in certain places, look for these real high structure oriented areas to fish. And where you find them high structure oriented areas is where you're going to find a lot of bait that's going to congest in one area, and you're also going to find your fish that are right there. They're not going to be far from the bait, folks. They're not going to be far from the bait at all. So just remember that. Let's go ahead back up in the studio there and continue with the webinar. John's been fishing. I've been fishing with John for a while. He's got on a good technique, and he's got on the fish up there on Lake James. So we went up there and did a couple of shows, and you know, he does quite well fishing for him in deep water. So I thought this would be a good presentation to show. It'd be a good webinar to show and talk about, because it's easy for you to do if you just remember, guys. Find the bait. Sometimes it takes a long time. Sometimes you don't find bait. Now, I've been out catfishing and fishing for different types of fish, not found bait, and just started drift fishing and trolling and caught fish all day long. It just, you know, a good practice is that the fish will always be close to the bait, all right? That's just a good thing to remember. You can see some of that bait on the depth finder was in 80 feet of water, 60 feet of water, 50 feet, all the way up to 30 feet. But you know what? We found that the fish that were around the bait in 30 feet of water were not as active as the fish that were down 50 feet. So, you know, that doesn't mean because you found the bait they're going to be active. It's really going to depend on the fish. So, remember GPS coordinates. Remember to mark your areas on GPS, or throw out a marker. I know a lot of guys that crappie fish, they'll throw out markers. This technique will work good on crappie. It'll work good on white perch. It'll work good on yellow perch. Any fish that you've got to get down 40, 50, 60 feet of water and give them a live bait presentation by slowly trolling or drifting over them, this technique will work, and it will work really good. Another thing you can do, and I don't happen to have a rig tied up here, is a lot of times I will use a bell weight, a bell sinker, and I'll put that on the very bottom of my line, and come up about 1.5 to 2 feet, and then put a hook on right there. And I'll tie on a little leader on there and put a hook on, and I'll put my minnow on there. Now, if I'm fishing for white perch, or if I'm fishing for yellow perch or something like that, I'll use that technique more, because it just seems like the walleye and the smallmouth are more cautious to that sinker bouncing across the bottom. It's something that's not normal to them. So. But, you'll catch them on that too. But that's another rig that you can use, and you can sound the bottom really good. And not only that, but by letting that bell sinker down, if you've got a heavy enough rod, you'll be able to feel what kind of bottom. You'll know if it's a hard bottom or a mud bottom. And that's another important thing, because sometimes you'll find fish on a harder bottom because there's more rocks and stuff around than you will on a muddy bottom. It just depends on the fish. Trolling motors, like I said earlier, there wasn't much wind out there. We were having to use the trolling motor to stay on the fish. That perhaps is probably the best way to stay on fish. Now, you could drift over them, but what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to mark a trail on your GPS. And after you get over them fish, pull up your rigs, go back, and then drift over them again with the wind, and use the wind to drift. That's a real effective method. It works really good catfishing. I use it all the time. But if you're fishing for these type of fish, sometimes it's a little bit more work than you need to do, okay? So, you see a lot of guys out jigging and stuff, and they'll sit in one area for a long time. And you can be sure that they're sitting on bait and they're sitting on fish, and they're watching their depth finder, keeping on them schools of fish. So just remember that, okay? We're going to get on out of here. We hope you enjoyed this webinar. Please go to Max Hill Fishing on YouTube and show Max a little support. He was helpful to us, pointing out a few things that he thought we probably should bring up. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're going to put together different webinars here every week or so. And I know we've got one coming up here on drifting for catfish with the Santee Rig, and that's going to be a really good webinar. It's a technique that we use all the time down on Santee Cooper Lake. So be sure to subscribe to our channel so you'll know when these webinars come up. If there's something you'd like to see us do, it doesn't have to be fishing. It can be hunting, guys. We don't just do fishing. We do hunting. We do gold prospecting. We do all kinds of stuff that has to do with activities in the great outdoors. So let us know. Leave us a comment. Let us know what you'd like to see. And we'll be glad to go ahead and try to do something with your suggestion. So thanks a lot for tuning in. We appreciate you watching our webinar tonight. Please be sure to stay tuned for the next one. And like always, I'm Jim from Carolina Outdoor Magazine TV Live. We'll catch you somewhere next time in the great outdoors when we do it all again. Thanks for watching.